Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today. It is Tuesday morning. Hello, Lindsey.
Happy Tuesday. We still feeling like the first week of school, or is it?
I think we are.
We're settled in.
We're settling in, but yeah, it's very first week of school vibes. Do you remember that as a kid?
I do. I was excited for it. I wore all my new clothes at once, like all in one day. It was ridiculous.
See, I went to a Catholic school and we had a school uniform, so there was no choice.
I always think that might be a little better for kids to not have to deal with the stress of like organizing an outfit every day. It takes probably an hour out of your schedule if you were like
for the ladies.
Yes.
I
know. We talked about outfit things like he has 5 and rotates them, and I have 5 million.
And you have to roll in here early enough to get your hair done and more elaborate makeup. I show up at the very last minute.
Barely any makeup.
They put some powder on me and I appear in the chair.
So coming up on Rising, CNN's Jake Tapper and White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller clashed last night. Did you see it? Over the future of Venezuela and who will run it.
Plus, the CDC has altered the childhood vaccine schedule. That's going to be controversial. They're now recommending fewer shots.
And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is threatening to reduce Senator Mark Kelly's military rank and retirement pay over a video where the senator urged service members to refuse illegal orders. But first, Robby, what is on your radar?
Let's get to it. Well, with dark clouds gathering over his previously sunny re-election bid, Tim Walz has had enough. Minnesota's Democratic governor announced yesterday, he would abandon his pursuit of a third term following widespread negative publicity due to his mishandling of welfare fraud allegations. Now, he made this announcement during a press conference, which he abruptly ended without taking questions after making a hostile remark about, of course, President Trump. Take a look.
I'm proud of the way we treat our neighbors. I'm proud of the way that we welcome people to this state. I'm proud of the way that we innovate. And I'm proud of the way that we are optimists for the future. No one's taking this away from us. Not the fraudsters, certainly not this president, not on my watch. Tomorrow, I'll be back with you. I'll give you an update on America's best paid family medical leave program that is now a week into it. And at that time, I'll take all your questions. Thank you all.
Now, Walz has not been accused of personal wrongdoing, but the buck stops here, as they say. Walz was the man in charge while fraudsters stole millions or perhaps even billions of taxpayer dollars, setting up fake charities, ransacking the medical system, and operating dubious child care services. The sheer amount of plunder has attracted national media attention in recent weeks, with even the New York Times throwing Walz under the bus. The governor's response has not reassured his critics that he is laser-focused on restoring credibility to these programs and mercilessly prosecuting the thieves. It's fine to insist, as Walz has, that the entire Somali diaspora should not be smeared for the criminal behavior of just some community members. I'm good with that. But the governor has made a habit of trying to redirect blame to other groups such as white men. Remember when Walz said coverage of the fraud story was akin to white supremacy? Let's watch.
This is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy when you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white.
Keep in mind that the accusations against the Somalis are about proportionality, that they're responsible for a disproportionate amount of fraud, not absolute levels of crime. So it's apples to oranges. Moreover, saying that we must be colorblind with respect to the ethnicities of the fraudsters while also calling for more white men to be held accountable is totally incoherent. Unfortunately, this incoherence is broadly representative of the Walz persona. This is a man who was elevated to national prominence by Vice President Kamala Harris when she picked him to be her 2025 running mate. Walz's own clumsily worded telling, she picked him because he could, quote, code talk to white guys like himself. I hate that phrase. He saw his job as reassuring his own identity group that they could vote for a black woman for president. It's a reductive and extremely flawed notion of what makes for a relatable presidential ticket. Harris underperformed with men, particularly young men, of all racial backgrounds, not specifically white guys. Walz likes football and fixing trucks, so vote Harris Walz 2024. Come on. This is identity politics at its most vacuous. But it's not just the Walz's vibes are off. His governance in the state of Minnesota has been disastrous, even apart from the fraud scandal. Indeed, Walz has achieved a record as hostile to human liberty as virtually any other currently seated governor. That's saying something. He was, first and foremost, a COVID tyrant who zealously enforced social distancing and mask requirements including by setting up a coronavirus snitch hotline. Citizens were encouraged to report their neighbors to the government for failing to abide by COVID rules. He also spent coronavirus relief money on pet projects and political kickbacks that were obviously outside the scope of what the money ought to have been used for. State workers' parking costs, teaching women and minority-owned businesses how to apply for state contracts, specifically those groups, and also the Minneapolis Zoo. Why not? For supporters of individual liberty, Walz's various pronouncements on policy issues were like nails on a chalkboard. He said that misinformation was not protected by the First Amendment. It is. He said socialism was just, quote, neighborliness. Nope. He said it was not a mistake to send sick COVID patients back to nursing homes. Even former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has given up that one. Come on. A year ago, Walz was seen as a potential 2028 vice presidential candidate. Candidate. Not just vice president. Maybe he'd be vice president again, but actual candidate. His decision, however, not to run for re-election, an explicit acknowledgement of the toll of the fraud scandal that it's taken on his reputation, seems like the end for Walz's political career to me. I guess at least he'll have plenty of time for those football games and fixing those trucks.
I thought that was funny because, I get that he's like supposed to be the relatable, former guy who is, teaches the kids sports. But
as a real man's man, a football-loving, truck-fixing, just guy's guy, I didn't relate to him.
Okay.
Maybe it's just me.
I think, why Kamala chose him, let's break it down. I think that you are trying to minimize a little bit about why she chose him. Now, he does have he does have a huge background in a rural community, so that makes him relatable in a real life, right? People in rural America could understand his teaching experience. He's a public school teacher, right? Rural America can explain that. That has nothing to do with a white guy that likes trucks. He also is a former service member. I think his National Guard experience is relevant here, and people can relate to that since we have people that do serve our country, right? Or have family members that do.
Right.
And look at that as very honorable.
He exaggerated his record.
There were, and he did not give good responses to those questions. I can be the first one to admit. And then he spent, 6 different terms in Congress, as well as, his experience before this year being governor, representing a conservative district. So he did a good job with his tenure, and I don't think that you should minimize why Kamala chose him, even though in her book she said he wasn't her first choice. So, that's still up for debate. I think that it's clear that the president was going to continue to attack him and Republicans were going to continue to attack him until Election Day. And so his response at the very most was lackluster about how long he took to respond. I do give him much more grace than you do because during the pandemic, there were extreme levels of fraud happening across the federal government and across local governments. And so I think that it's important to know that people are being prosecuted in Minnesota, but also federally because they took advantage of funds that were available during the pandemic when everybody was pretty much exacerbated and resources were all over the place. Yeah. And no one knew what to do. But I think as governor, he did do a lot more than absolutely nothing and not respond to this fraud. That was a drop the ball. He admitted that he dropped the ball, but he talked about paid family medical leave and parental leave. He really pushed that across the aisle in Minnesota, and they have really good, I think, a standard that the rest of the country can look to. And he also did legalize recreational marijuana, which I think was a good thing. So his whole legacy is not trash.
That is the
And so I think you shouldn't minimize it just because of this incident, even though he did drop the ball. But I think we can point to governors across the country that have a big thing that they could have handled way better. Now, this was a huge incident, but I'm just saying he didn't do absolutely nothing in his entire time in government.
The COVID snitch line.
And the snitch line, you just feel offended about that. But it's not the craziest thing in the world. I mean, if I was scared that my grandmother was going to die from you coughing on me, I might snitch on you, Robbie. I'm not going to lie.
We would not have gotten along.
We wouldn't have gotten along then because I want to save my grandma and myself, and you're coughing and not wearing a mask. I'm snitching.
I ain't wearing a mask. No, if I had to travel and I was, for some reason, and you couldn't just stay home, and I was ill, I would wear a mask. But I will not wear a mask as a prophylactic measure because we're in part of some mass social experiment.
Up next, more updates on the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Don't go anywhere. Stephen Miller clashed with Jake Tapper last night on CNN over a host of topics, but things got especially heated regarding Venezuela.
Tapper confronted Trump's deputy chief of staff about who the president thinks should lead the country moving forward, and it devolved from there. Take a listen to just part of it.
Should there be an election?
Let me
if you give me the floor for 30 seconds, let me tell you what we are doing here, Jake. This whole period that happened after World War II, where the West began apologizing and groveling and begging
I don't even
and
know,
engaging in these
honestly,
vast
what you're talking
reparations
about right
schemes.
now.
What I'm talking about, Jake, is the idea. And by the way, you do. I know you love doing that smarmy thing, Jake, and I was hoping to be better than that this time.
I asked you about if there should be an election.
Exactly.
I asked you if there would be an election in Venezuela. That's what I asked. I said, why was the president so quick to dismiss Machado?
The exchange continued.
You invaded the country. We went into the country and we seized the leader of Venezuela.
Damn straight we did.
And I'm saying,
we're not going to let.
So is the U.S. going to have new elections?
Jake, is that we're not going to let Tin Pot communist dictators send rapists into our country, send drugs into our country, send weapons into our country.
Okay.
And we're not going to let a country fall into the hands of our adversaries. The priority right now, as the president has made clear, is a judicious, thoughtful, careful transition process to secure a great future for Venezuela and to secure a great future for America.
Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, was sworn in as acting president after Maduro's capture and so far has led a defiant Venezuelan government despite Trump's claim that the U.S. would run the country.
Meantime, Maduro and his wife appeared in a New York court for the first time yesterday. The couple entered dual not guilty pleas to drug and weapons charges laid out in the indictment against them. Now, Maduro reportedly told the judge, quote, "I am innocent, I am not guilty, I'm a decent man." Maduro also addressed the judge directly, telling him, quote, "I was captured at my home in Caracas, Venezuela," and his lawyers followed up that by describing it as a, quote, "military abduction that violated the law." That may indicate his lawyers are likely to attack the legality of Maduro's arrest going forward.
But the swirling concerns over legality have not deterred the Trump administration. On Sunday, Trump said this about Venezuela's neighbor, Colombia. Take a listen.
Colombia is very sick, too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States. And he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
What does that mean? He's not going to be doing it very long.
He's not doing it very long. He has cocaine mills and cocaine factories. He's not going to be doing it very long.
So there will be an operation by the U.S.
It sounds good to me.
In response to that, Colombian President Gustavo Petro shot back, saying, "Come get me. I'm waiting for you here." He followed it up with a warning on X Monday that reads in part, "If you bomb peasants, thousands of guerrillas will return in the mountains. And if you arrest the president, whom a good part of my people want and respect, you will unleash the popular jaguar."
I'm not sure if daring Trump to actually do it is a good strategy. He
very well
might do it.
If we should just go out and take out every leader that
I don't think we should.
Right? I don't think
stop
that
taunting him. He's he's willing to do it, and he will face no.
But is he well within his rights to do it? That's the point. He shouldn't just be willing to do it, and because you pissed President Trump off, he just does it. That's part of the problem, is that he's just going around saying, so what about if China's like, oh, I'm inspired. I like Taiwan over there. They got some cocaine over there. I'm going to go in Taiwan.
No, I disagree with that entirely. I hope China does not take Taiwan, obviously, but whether China does that or not has nothing to do with whether we start knocking off Tin Pot dictators. They're not responding to they're going to do it if they're going to do it. The idea that, oh, if we do something, that provides cover to, no, Russia and China are giant evil countries. Russia is conquering Ukraine. China wants to retake Taiwan. They're doing those things. They're going to do those things if they're going to do them. It has nothing to do with how we police events in our hemisphere. Doesn't impact that at all. I don't think that's the argument. The argument against doing exactly what has been done and is proposed is I don't even understand what the point is. So, and Stephen Miller, I know a lot of our right-leaning viewers really love him. He irritates me greatly with his high-pitched, squeaky voice, where he's not. Jake Tapper's asking completely reasonable questions. Okay, we took out Maduro. Who's going to be in charge of the country? Trump said we are running the country. The U.S. and European countries have recognized Edmundo Gonzalez as the legitimate leader of the country. That's who Machado thinks should be in charge of the country. But the person currently in charge of the country is just Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. So that's three different scenarios. Basically, the current regime being intact, but Maduro gone, or the U.S. having some kind of occupation, or us making way for Gonzalez or for another election. Which of those things are going to happen? That's a perfectly legitimate question to put to a top spokesman for the administration. And then he starts talking about,
World
Well,
War
since
II.
World War II, we did shut up.
And
Just
he-
answer the question.
And Jake Tapper, he said he was being smirking and he didn't like the face that he was making. But I mean, that's a real, like you said, there's no plan in place. What's the plan? What's the price tag? American lives? What is the timeline? It doesn't make sense. And when you talk about Rodriguez being in place, she was in the National Assembly yesterday and she said, free the president of Venezuela, free Maduro.
I mean, right, there's an argument if Maduro should go, she should go too. But you would have to, again, this is why this is supposed to be brought to Congress, and they're supposed to they're supposed to vote on a specific agenda, a military agenda, that the president then carries out. And because we've bypassed that step or decided that that step never needs to take place, then it's just,
what are you saying? We, President Trump and his administration, have bypassed that step consistently in multiple incidents regarding Venezuela.
Right, and
that's why we're in this situation.
Because now we don't even know. I don't know what the mission is. I don't know what they're trying to achieve. I don't know if it's mission accomplished. It was just about Maduro. It was just a law enforcement action. It's not about changing the regime in Venezuela. It's just about getting this guy for a variety of reasons. Maybe that's what the case actually is, and some people have made that. But other people in the administration say we're gonna rebuild the country or be not a safe haven for enemies of America. Well, it's still a haven for enemies of America if it's in her hands.
And Delcy Rodriguez, she forcefully has condemned, even though President Trump is saying they'll work together and she said she might be open to it. She's saying to the people of her country, free Maduro, and forcefully condemning him on her airwaves and to her direct addresses to the nation. And
The
so
people in
to
her
me,
country
that's
are
going to.
celebrating in the streets that Maduro is gone. So,
but I don't see how they would separate the difference between Maduro leading and her leading. And I think that it could easily be a nuanced situation. Like there is, like I told you, the county in Florida that is celebrating specifically has the highest population of Venezuelan immigrants. It can be existing that Venezuelan people actually did not want him to lead. He's an illegitimate leader. That does not mean that the United States had the legal authority to skip over Congress, go in there and snatch that man out of his country and bring him to U.S. jail on drug charges. And we're going to talk about a lot of those drug charges that are not consistent in any way with the way that President Trump is operating his administration based on the people that he's pardoned in recent months, to say that you're going tough on drugs, specifically when it comes to Venezuela. So a lot of people are looking at this and saying not only what's the legality, but what was the thought process here and what are we really trying to do over there?
Yeah, I'm a libertarian. I personally don't think cocaine should even be illegal, so I'm not sure on what basis we would go after. Again, if it's just about the drug war, we have prosecuted this thing as hard as we possibly can for 50 years. Hasn't succeeded at all in reducing demand, because it's a demand issue. People in the U.S. want to take these drugs, and they will find ways to do so. If that's what it's about, this is a non-starter for me.
Well, U.S. health officials are slashing the number of vaccines recommended for all children. We'll tell you all about that next. Stick with us.
CDC is altering the childhood vaccine schedule by reducing the number of vaccine recommendations for all children ages 17 to 11. That actually mirrors the approach of some other nations, specifically Denmark.
Now, the CDC will no longer routinely recommend every child receive vaccines for rotavirus, influenza, meningococcal disease, RSV, hepatitis A, and hepatitis B.
In a Truth Social post, President Trump applauded the shift, writing in part, "Effective today, America will no longer require 72 jabs for our beautiful, healthy children. Many Americans, especially the Maha moms, have been praying for these common sense reforms for many years." In another Truth Social post, Trump gave medical advice to pregnant women, saying pregnant women don't use Tylenol unless absolutely necessary. I know you love this one, Lindsey. Don't give Tylenol to your young child for virtually any reason. Break up the MMR shot into 3 totally separate shots, not mixed. Take the vaccine in 5 separate medical visits.
The American Medical Association criticized the move in a statement saying, deeply concerned by recent changes to the childhood immunization schedule. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy also lamented the change, writing on X, quote, changing the pediatric vaccine schedule based on no scientific input on safety risks and little transparency will cause unnecessary fear for patients and doctors and will make America sicker. I always think we have to remember
Clutch your pills over this.
the Tylenol thing. I just parking that thing in the parking lot because I'm over the fact that the president was telling people that, especially having gone through the entire 10-month pregnancy experience and knowing that everything was so delicate for me because I was a first-time mom at the time, and I had migraines. I deal with migraines in general randomly, like they'll come up every couple months. So if it comes up, you don't take Advil. Tylenol is recommended. And if this had happened when I was pregnant, I would have been freaking out. So I think he's not a doctor. He needs to just stop. But let's remember that Kennedy was the co-founder of Children's Health Defense prior to taking this position, which is an anti-vax organization. And let's remember all the things he said about vaccine that will show you that he's not somebody who supports historical vaccines that work. So public trust not only is eroded, which I know you have a problem with since the pandemic when they were telling us to get all these shots unnecessarily, which I agree with you on. But since then, it's not getting better now that RFK is at the helm of health. And he, I think public health officials are complaining about this because we went down, like you pointed out, from 17 to 11 vaccines. And some of those are the flu shot. Some of those are RSV, like we named. 3 kids in Massachusetts died over the last few weeks because of the flu. So it's a real thing. So if it's recommended by doctors right now and kids are getting vaccines, why would we stop them from getting vaccine because RFK and Maha Mom say so?
We're not stopping them from getting it. We're just removing it from the vaccine schedule.
Yes, nobody's
if it's
making
on
you do
the
anything, but it's
vaccine
still
schedule. That means it is required in some schools, or it is, I think it has to do with the liability the companies take on if it's not on the vaccine schedule and you get it and you have some adverse reaction, you could take legal action against the company. So I think the question becomes, why are we so desperate to protect pharmaceutical companies from scrutiny? You can still get it. No one's making it illegal. No one's saying you can't. It's just saying that as the science has shown, for instance, the COVID vaccine, is very, very little threat to otherwise healthy young people. Again, there are exceptions. If you're not a healthy young person, you should get it. There's nobody's contradicting that. And that would be the case with the flu vaccine. Hepatitis B is you have no risk of it unless you fall into a very specific group where your parent has a specific, behavioral risk profile, essentially. Why inject that into people if they have no risk of having contracted it, and so on and so forth. So I consider these things to be common sense. Again, in keeping with what Denmark is not an anti-science. It's a healthier country than we are, and they have this
way
kind of
smaller
thing.
country. And also, I think when the CDC and when public health organizations are saying, oh, we're limiting the number of vaccines, people have an overall distrust. I don't think everybody's reading the entire article about which vaccines. People are like, if I can decide to get vaccines, I might decide not to get the measles vaccination, which I know is not on the list of ones that they're no longer recommending. But parents in Texas have decided to not vaccinate their kids against measles because of distrust in the vaccination. And we've seen 2 kids die in 2025 because they did not have their measles vaccination. So like when public trust is eroded, it leads to real-time consequences. And while I appreciate parents making decisions for their children, when we're in a state of constant disarray because an anti-vaxxer is at the helm of things, it causes chaos and confusion, and people decide to make decisions that ultimately hurt their children. And I don't think that's a good thing. Next on Rising, I'll discuss President Trump's cherry-picking behavior on his war on drugs. Stick around.
Welcome back to Rising. I misspoke in our previous segment when we were talking about the vaccine schedule. I said like ages 17 to 11. I meant we're reducing the number of vaccines from 17 to 11. Just wanted to clarify that before we got to our next segment, which is Lindsey's Lens. Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Okay, let's talk about it. So if you're confused like I am about the White House's messaging on drugs right now, you're not alone because the logic simply doesn't add up. On one hand, President Trump is escalating the drug war with unprecedented force. On the other, he's opening prison doors for convicted drug traffickers. That contradiction isn't just political whiplash, it's dangerous. So last weekend, Trump ordered a dramatic military operation in Venezuela, removing President Nicolas Maduro and charging him with narcotics trafficking and narco-terrorism. The justification, according to Trump and his administration, is that Maduro led a, quote, campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. Attorney General Pam Bondi put it bluntly, Maduro and his wife, quote, will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. That's the tough on crime headline. But here's the part that doesn't square. Just last month, Trump pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, a man convicted in the U.S. court of helping smuggle more than 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. Hernandez wasn't some low-level player. Prosecutors once described his case as, quote, one of the largest and most violent drug trafficking conspiracies in the world. They had even argued that he should die in prison. But Trump's explanation? He told reporters on Saturday that Hernandez was treated unfairly. He went into more detail that supposed unfair treatment on Air Force One, explaining it late last year.
the people of Honduras really thought he was set up, that it was a terrible thing. He was the president of the country, and they basically said he was a drug dealer because he was the president of the country. And they said it was a Biden administration setup, and I looked at the facts and I agreed with them.
Calling it a Biden administration setup is not accurate. Hernandez's own brother was arrested and prosecuted on drug trafficking charges during the first Trump administration. And the prosecutor of Hernandez's brother was Emile Beauvais, who went on to become Trump's own personal attorney and is now a judge appointed by Trump. There's no evidence for this being a Biden setup at all. But I digress. Let's get back to the bigger point. Drug trafficking is serious enough to justify a military invasion of one country, but not serious enough to keep another convicted trafficker behind bars. And Hernandez isn't even an outlier. During Trump's second term, he has pardoned or released multiple figures tied to drug operations, including Ross Ulbricht, who was serving a life sentence for creating Silk Road, the dark web marketplace that fueled global drug sales. As the Justice Department stated in 2015, quote, Ulbricht deliberately operated Silk Road as an online criminal marketplace intended to enable its users to buy and sell drugs and other illicit illegal goods. The administration also freed and deported Cesar Humberto Lopez Larios, accused by the DOJ of, quote, being a high-ranking leader of MS-13. Now, Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia warned at that time that the decision, quote, not only undercuts ongoing federal investigation, but also threatens U.S. national security. So what are we really looking at here? Jeffrey Singer of the Cato Institute says the quiet part out loud, noting, if this is what's motivating Trump, if it's stopping drug trafficking, why is he pardoning the Honduran president who was convicted of cocaine trafficking? He went on to say it's never been about that. They're basically using the drug war as an excuse. And that's the through line. This isn't a coherent drug policy. It's a personalized one. Similar crimes, same prosecutors, same supply chains, totally different outcomes. The fact is you can't use the federal criminal prosecutions to promote foreign policy views or solve vendettas. You cannot claim moral authority in the drug war while selectively deciding who pays the price. And you can't call it justice when it looks this arbitrary. And you definitely can't call it leadership when the message keeps changing depending on who benefits.
I'm going to derail your entire
No.
Focus
Stick
on
to the
one
focus.
specific
Okay.
one of those, Ross Ulbricht. That is my friend, who I was fully in support of having been released. He did not set up a specific drug trafficking thing. He created a site where all goods and services could be exchanged outside the purview of government oversight. Some, yes, illegal. I don't think they should be illegal. Well, I don't think drugs should be illegal. I am for drug legalization.
Trump does, and that's why he's in Venezuela.
Okay, those were things were sold on the platform, and he was blamed for the illicit activity on the platform he set up. He was not participating in those activities. And then in the sentencing, the judge made a mistake, and he was sentenced as if he had been found to have arranged an illegal transaction when he had not, and he got life in prison because of that. The Libertarian Party, of which I'm a member, has campaigned vigorously for his release. When the Libertarian Party's chair met with, her name was Angela McArdle, she met with Trump. One of the conditions for the support of the Libertarian Party was that Trump would pardon him, which he did. He fulfilled that promise, and I am glad. It's one of my very favorite things that Trump has done.
Okay.
So
let's pluck one people out of the many examples that I gave, and let's compare apples to apples, talk about the former Honduras president and the Venezuelan president and how their accusations and charges were very similar, and one recently was pardoned and one has been pulled out of his home country and brought to a U.S. jail. And let's also connect the dots, since a lot of people are raising an eyebrow saying, is this about drugs? And let's remember that when Trump was on the campaign trail in April of 2024, at dinner at Mar-a-Lago, he told a bunch of oil donors, donate $1 billion to me, and I'm going to make sure that you guys feel whole on the other side of that donation.
It doesn't even seem clear to me that the oil companies are interested in this. It sounds like it would take a massive investment for them to take advantage of
and that was some of the reporting, but then
that's what I've heard.
But all we're looking for is a coherent policy. This can't be a war on drugs when you're pardoning drug criminals of similar, very similar.
You say that it
incidents.
can't be, but it can
So,
be.
no, but then how? Then he's just picking vendettas with who? So then what is the motivation? People are trying to look into that. If it's not oil, then what is it? Because you surely don't think that fentanyl is the biggest issue because you keep mentioning fentanyl and it's not even coming mostly out of Venezuela. So what is the actual thing that you're trying to convict the entire or rid the world of while also pardoning and putting people back in the world that are convicted of similar crimes?
I think, in all honesty, it's not about drugs.
So what do you make of this?
Well, he was a evil dictator and a communist and an enemy of the United States, and so we took him out. I think that's what it's about.
Well, then he's going to go around the rest of the world and find evil communist dictators and take them all out.
Not the rest of the world,
that's
but
the policy that
in
you'd
the
like to
Western
see move
Hemisphere.
forward.
I'm saying
what it has
what
to
I
be.
like. I'm just trying to explain the administration's rationale. You're right. They've offered the drug thing, oil, policing our own hemisphere, fighting communism. There's a bunch of justifications being put forward. The drug justification, which might be the technical legal justification, where they're saying this is why it's law enforcement rather than military, which I don't really
Nobody buys
by at all. No one is persuaded by it. Yeah, I don't think it's about drugs. I think it's bad guy. We got him.
Right, and since no one's persuaded that this is not a military operation, boots on the ground, then when he goes to court and argues that he was illegally taken out of his country, we might have a whole waste of time that we have on our hands.
His country. I mean, he illegally installed himself as the ruler of the country.
He's still born there. He still lived there. He was taken out of his country. I mean, by our military, and they said it wasn't a war on Venezuela. It was a war on drugs. And he's saying this is illegal.
War.
The action was this is a war with Venezuela.
Well, because I saw my friend Kat Timpf at Fox News say this. We described the drugs entering our country as a war, but we're not going to describe going there and taking their president as an act of war. We've said what they're doing is an act of war, even though they've not sent troops into our country. So clearly what we did was more of a war thing than what, supposedly they've done. So I don't think the legal justification is particularly sound. That's why it should have been voted on by Congress, and it should have been about deposing this rogue leader who is despised by his own people. His people are celebrating in the streets. They're celebrating all over the world. Videos of people celebrate. The Venezuelan people that I know, even who are, if they might be totally non-political or even like not conservative or Trump supporting in any respect, they're all cheering. They hate him. He's evil.
Two things can be true at once.
Yeah, and so I'm, even as I am hesitant to endorse regime change or say that the U.S. government should do anything, or the federal government should do anything beyond Congress's powers, I am still, I am moved and I am happy for the people of Venezuela who are cheering the possibility of freedom taking hold again in their country, who want that, who yearn for it.
What did you say yesterday? Viva, what's the saying?
Viva la libertad. They want freedom and they deserve it. Next up, Pete Hegseth is moving to demote the military rank of senator and retired Navy captain Mark Kelly. Coming up, why Hegseth says the senator is in violation of the Code of Military Justice.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is taking action to demote Senator Mark Kelly's military rank and possibly cut into his retirement pension.
The move is due to Kelly's involvement in a video where he and 5 other Democrats told U.S. service members that it's their duty to defy illegal orders. Hegseth called the video seditious. He said it violates the Uniform Code of Military Justice. His statement from Monday says, in part, as a retired Navy captain who is still receiving a military pension, Captain Kelly knows he's still accountable to military justice, and the Department of War and the American people expect justice. These actions are based on Captain Kelly's public statements from June through December 2025, in which he characterized lawful military operation as illegal and counseled members of the armed forces to refuse lawful orders.
Now, Kelly is a former Navy captain who served for 25 years before retiring and getting into politics. He also spent 15 years as a NASA astronaut, along with his twin brother, Scott. Kelly did respond to Hegseth's statement. He says, in part, over 25 years in the U.S. Navy, 39 combat missions, and 4 missions to space, I risked my life for this country and to defend our Constitution, including the First Amendment rights of every American to speak out. I never expected that the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense would attack me for doing exactly that. If Pete Hegseth, the most unqualified Secretary of Defense in our country's history, thinks he can intimidate me with a censure or threats to demote me or prosecute me, he still doesn't get it. I will fight this with everything I've got, not for myself, but to send a message back that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump don't get to decide what Americans in this country get to say about their government.
The video that Kelly's potentially being demoted for was released amidst the controversial deadly boat strikes the U.S. has conducted off the coast of South America. But Kelly and the other lawmakers kept their messages vague, not referring to any specific actions that service members should defy.
Now, according to the New York Times, Kelly's lawyers have maintained that the senator was just articulating a fundamental principle of military law. In a letter from last month, they indicated they would take legal action if the Department of Defense tried to take any action against Senator Kelly. This is extremely petty. I think it should let down people who fight for this country, especially somebody like Mark Kelly, who named the amount of time that he's fought for this country. I think when the Democratic lawmakers released the video, no matter how you felt about it, there was a slew of Republican leadership that was questioning the same thing. Maybe they didn't go to the point of saying what was actually part of the rule of our land, which is that if you think something is illegal as a military order, you do not have to comply. But that's literally what they said in the video. And at the same time, Congress members on both sides of the aisle were saying, what we're doing off the coast of South America, is that legal? When there were reports in the New York Times that parents of a person from Trinidad and Tobago was like, wait, my son was one of the people killed. He's not a drug criminal. What's going on here?
So they say.
And so, yeah, this is all reports, but so Trump says these are all drug criminals. We have to just accept people's word for it as opposed to going through Congress the right way and making sure this is something that the United States wanted to engage in, which he's not calling a war. And I think, Kelly being the highly decorated person that he is and military member with all this experience, this is sending a bigger message to service members that basically if you speak out of turn and say something that the president or Hegseth doesn't like, well, then you will be retaliated against. And I don't think that's the message that we should be sending to people that spend more than 2 decades fighting for our country.
I basically agree.
I have tears in my eyes.
There's nothing to fight over, right?
But you always excuse the pettiness of the administration, and I think that it shouldn't be excused. Like this, where will we stop? Like you're going to attack a service member and not only take away some of their pay, retirement pay, but demote them in title. I just think that the fact that we have no decorum whatsoever and are taking the time out for these vendettas because people put videos out, which honors the free speech that they talk about so vehemently defending. I just don't get that. And I think that there has to be like someone in the party that holds them accountable to these petty games that they're playing with people, wasting time and money trying to attack people that just say things that they don't like.
Yep.
Who's it going to be?
What do you want me to say?
It should be you. This is what I'm waiting for you to say.
What am I supposed to do?
You should say this is not acceptable, President Trump. You should tell everybody who's
it's not
watching
President
us
Trump
right
doing
now.
It's Hegseth.
You should. It's both of them in tandem. President Trump said seditious behavior is punishable by death in a November 20th post on Truth Social in response to the Democratic lawmakers putting out that video. Yes? And so is that what we should be saying to a former service member and Democratic leaders, especially in the wake of Charlie Kirk, that we should be punishable by death because they're seditious?
No.
No. You can't just say one word the whole
Sure
thing.
I can.
No, you can't. You have to say more words. Because you have to say something about the people that are in the comments defending Trump's behavior consistently. Jen kind of broke down the 3 kind of Republicans there are. And there's some that are just like, whatever you do, I'm going to go with it. That's unacceptable. People should be able to say right is right and wrong is wrong.
My issue is what you alluded to. Mark Kelly is a senator, and he has to be able to opine on issues of the day without fearing some risk of, malfeasance of this kind. I mean, I do think it's just generally not. I want soldiers to refuse to follow obviously blatantly unconstitutional or immoral or illegal orders. I don't think it's a practical consideration really for the average soldier to be constantly working through whether more granular things they've been asked to do are within the scope of, that's not on them to figure out, that's on the Supreme Court and lawmakers and so on. So, there shouldn't be constant dissension in the ranks really, but, there have been cases throughout American history of, the scenes from Vietnam, the My Lai massacre, shoot this person right now in the face, where we would want a soldier to say, to think twice about doing that, I think. So I didn't really have any problem with what Kelly said specifically, while again maintaining that the broader questions about what is constitutional and what is legal, we won't have a coherent fighting force if everybody's questioning their orders all the time or saying, wait, I got to check with a constitutional lawyer about whether I can, patrol the, we've got the National Guard in D.C. right now. They gotta do their patrols. They can't. The question about whether they should be there is one the courts are resolving. The courts has basically said DC's fine because it's federal, partly patrol, but they can't send them to Chicago. Okay, so that's something that's above the individual soldier's pay grade, and I don't say that in a dismissive way. I say that it's just not up to them. It would be a burden on them to say that it's their responsibility. But a general reminder that you can think for yourself. You should opt not to do things that blatantly violate your moral code. If you're routinely, I've said this before, if you're routinely being asked to do things that violate your own moral code in the military or in government service more broadly, then you should exit that service probably, is what I would say to that.
Yes, and so, I want you to condemn this behavior like you would condemn Jasmine Crockett. I'm giving you the last 30 seconds on the floor.
I think I did.
No, not strong enough. Act like this is somebody who you can't stand.
I'm not going to set my hair on fire over it, but I think it is a waste of time and not a good idea to punish Mark Kelly for expressing a rather benign point of view that I effectively agree with.
Well said, Robby. Next up, Candace Owens is speaking out after a French court found 10 people guilty of cyberbullying Brigitte Macron. We'll be right back after this.
Candace Owens is speaking out after a Paris court found 10 people guilty of cyberbullying First Lady Brigitte Macron for stating online that she was actually born a man. Owens wrote on X, quote, "Once again, these headlines are written in a way to deceive the public into believing that Brigitte proved she was a woman. No. France just has cyberbullying laws. In essence, Rachel Dolezal could secure a conviction against people for asserting that she was born white."
Rachel Dolezal's classic. Some of the defendants' posts also compared the 24-year-old age gap between the Macrons to pedophilia and were viewed tens of thousands of times. One of the convicted persons received a 6-month jail sentence, but under French law, it can be served at your home. 8 of them got suspended sentences ranging from 4 to 8 months. All of them will have to undergo cyberbully awareness training. On top of that, the guilty were fined 600 euros each and must contribute around $12,000 to Macron. And 3 of them are banned from using X for 6 months.
The court argued that the repeated publications had cumulative harmful effects. Macron said over the weekend she sued to, quote, set an example against harassment. Owens is facing a defamation lawsuit in the U.S. from the Macrons for making similar claims about that, and Owens has been the most prominent voice spreading this theory that Brigitte Macron was actually born Jean-Michel Chognot, which is the name of her brother.
Reactions abounded on X. Conservative filmmaker Mike Cernovich said they are sending people to jail over this, and British broadcaster Piers Morgan said, "Oh, Candace O, looks like you owe me $300K.
And longtime viewers know, or even recent viewers know, that I do not like Candace Owens at all. However, I share her distrust of the cyberbullying law in France. I think, again, Brigitte Macron is suing her. I'm comfortable with libel, defamation to settle maliciously false claims, and I have no doubt that Candace Owens' claim about her is false. So she's suing her. That's different than having a law that says you can't make harassing statements about a political figure. That's crazy. We would never accept that in our country, where you can't make fun of Trump's hair or his skin color or whatever. It's like, that would be crazy. So I'm totally with her that the cyberbullying law is bad, and the idea of people having their cell phones confiscated or they got to do house arrest because they made fun of the French president's wife, that's crazy. Crazy stuff. France, you're crazy.
So on the less serious mind, I'm like, you know what? If only trolls had to experience this on X, this would be brilliant. Brilliant. I love this type of punishment. But my mind that follows the Constitution and believes in the law of the land knows that in the U.S., this is completely not appropriate. people were accused and convicted of or harassing and defaming her knowingly, saying that she was a man in a coordinated effort. And this is France, and we're talking about a country that has specific laws
They do not have free speech there.
that they have free speech until it infringes on things like personal dignity as part of their reputation, privacy. And so that's what their law allows. And so if you're over there talking smack, saying in a coordinated effort and what they accuse them of, saying that she's a man and all this other stuff, well, then you got to be prepared to answer to the law of the land in your country. In the U.S., it's likely and 100% for the most part would not fly, but this wasn't the U.S.
Well, that's true, but I'm just saying the way we do it is better. It is better to have a permissive structure.
What about pleasant people online? This might deter people from being on my other. Going back to my first thought of mine, I love pleasant.
There is
Don't you like?
Trump.
You said the other day, and I was so surprised to hear you say this. You were like, when people come at you online, because you have a lot of followers on X, and when people come at you online, you have to be strong-minded because it does kind of bother you sometimes. Okay, wouldn't you prefer if people did not go to the depths of underground and dig to the deepest hole of the earth to come at you? You could just stay surface level.
I don't think our country would be better off if people were constrained by the law from behaving in that way, because it would also constrain them from, it constrains people from telling lies or harassing you or being bad, but it also constrains them for arriving at some truth that has been forbidden by the government. Oh, and I will add, by the way, Rachel Dolezal, I have a hot take there.
Oh, tell me.
Nothing wrong. I'm on her side.
I found Dolezal just completely comical in the fact that somebody brought up her name.
Why can't you associate with being a different race?
I was tickled. Let me tell you, I was a writer for Melissa Harris Perry at the time on MSNBC, who had her on as a guest and took your viewpoint. Like, well, if you want to fight for the people on NAACP, go for it. If you want to, she's fighting the good fight.
Accept, or liberals accept, conservatives don't accept it, but liberals accept that you can change your gender. Why can't you change your race?
She can also be a white lady fighting for the betterment of the experience of the black experience. And she also could just be herself.
I don't understand. It's incoherent to me that you could be a lady and say you're a man and now you're a man.
If you guys want us to do a Dolezal segment, let us know in the comments and we'll continue this on.
Gender is more immutable than races. Just saying. That does it for us on Rising Live. Thanks for watching. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so you never miss any content. We will see you back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.